Democratic Party organization. We are thrilled that Congresswoman Sherry Bustos has agreed to moderate the forum, and we welcome all our candidates. I'm sure you will find it informative as you consider your Democratic Party candidates for Illinois Secretary of State. Thank you, enjoy the forum, and let's work to get Democrats elected. It's hosted by the North
3,000 square miles in this district, 14 counties. That includes Stephenson, Carroll, and Joe Daviess. And I've been proud to represent this district for nearly 10 years now. We've got about 10,000 family farms that are in this congressional district. We have about 90,000 labor households. So that's just a quick glimpse of the counties that you are addressing tonight. So just for tonight, I will be the forum moderator. And so let's get right into it. Very quickly, before we get started, I want to go over a couple of the ground rules. First of all of the candidates should answer only the questions asked of them. I know that as a candidate many times over myself, I understand the urge to talk about all of your priorities, but we want to stay on topic and on track. So listen to the question and then please answer that question. Number two, please refrain from addressing each other directly. Remember, this is about the voters, so keep your focus on them. And please remember that the coordinating organizations do not make endorsements in a Democratic primary. So the idea here is that they are just hosting this event in order to offer an opportunity for the voters in this region. The intent is for all of the candidates to have the chance to make their best showing. Show the voters who you are, show them what you stand for. Encourage the best Democratic voter turnout possible and for more people to be involved in the electoral process. So I'd like to introduce the candidates for the office of Secretary of State. So first up, we have Alexi Genulius. Welcome, Alexi, and would you please take no more than 2 minutes to address the audience?
Thank you to the county chairman. Thank you to the organizations and the counties that are putting this together. I also want to give a special thank you to my friend, Congressman Sherry Bustos. Thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for everything you've done for our state. You will be sorely missed in Congress. We need people like you in Congress now more than ever. So I'm excited for whatever you decided to do going forward, but thank you to your service, for your service to our nation. I know we're gonna get into this during the forum, but I also want to thank Alderman Pat Dowell and Alderman David Moore, two of my friends who are working very hard and traveling the state, and I see them a lot. And but thank you for your service to our city and to our state. As you mentioned, this is an important, a very important election for a very important seat during a very important time in our nation's history. And I think the challenges that we face as a state and a nation and a democracy, we need people to step up, to stand up, to lead. And when I think about the challenges across the country, most specifically voting rights and making sure that people are registered to vote, and that we have secretaries of state across the nation who are going to protect voting rights. We will talk during this forum about our platform for this race, which is modernization of services, making sure that we bring some efficiencies and technology to the office. Also want to talk about the library function of the office as the state's librarian, what we can do to help young boys and girls, especially across the state, who have been left behind because of COVID. And I'm excited about the opportunity. I am proud of the fact that I served as state treasurer. I serve these 3 counties. I'm very proud of my record as state treasurer. We helped a lot of working families. And on the campaign side, as I'm sure we'll get into, I'm very proud of the support we've received from over 30 county chairmen, almost all of organized labor, over 120 elected officials, but this is about more than just endorsements. I hope that we're going to continue to travel the state, get as much support as possible. Most importantly, we have to keep this seat in Democrat hands. We have to continue Jesse White's legacy of public service, and we have to do everything we can to protect our democracy and to protect our planet.
Next time.
Thank you again for having me. I'm happy to be here. It's an honor to see you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Alexi. Next up, we have David Moore. Welcome, David, and would you please introduce yourself to those watching at home in no more than 2 minutes, please?
Okay, thank you. I think that was a little over 2, but I'll try to stay within the 2. My name is David Moore. I'm an alderman in the city Chicago City Council. I'm going into my 7th year as alderman. I came up on the south side of Chicago, got exposed to public service or service in church as a junior deacon, but then got exposed to public service at the age of 13. I became a block club president and eventually a CAPS coordinator working with our police department. And I eventually became a precinct captain, getting people elected throughout Cook County and the city of Chicago. I eventually rose my way up to the director of field operations for the 17th Ward Democratic Organization, getting people like Clinton, President Clinton, Senators Durbin and others elected. I'm the only one in this race who circulated for petitions for Secretary of State Jesse White back in 1998 to get elected. And so I eventually ran for alderman and also became committeeman of the 17th Ward. I have a dual degree in accounting and operations management. I started out going to school at Western Illinois University, where I graduated from. I served as an RA, and just being at Western and also working in the Quad Cities and living in the Quad Cities, I got to know different people across this state, and that's why I learned to love Illinois. As far as the Secretary of State seat, I see it in 3 buckets: the service of the Secretary of State, the business of the Secretary of State, and the responsibility of the Secretary of State. From the service side, this seat must remain a servant seat and cannot go back to being a political seat. That is why I worked hard to get Secretary White elected, because it was marred with scandal and corruption. I want to make sure we have someone with a servant's heart. There's the business of the Secretary of State, and including modernization, we have to make sure that one of my proposed ideas is make sure that we bring the Secretary of State's office to libraries and satellite offices. And then as well, making sure we get our youth involved from the responsibility of the Secretary of State. And so I'll stop there, but that was, I had some one timing, and that was the other candidate was over 2 minutes, but I'll stop there.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, David. And then our third candidate this evening, we have Pat Dowell. Welcome, Pat, and please introduce yourself to our viewers this evening. And again, if you could keep your introductory remarks to 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Congressman Busso. And I want to thank the Northwest Illinois Democrats for inviting me here tonight. I'm very excited, and I want to be your next Secretary of State. I am a mother, I'm a consistent Democrat, and I am also a alderman in the city of Chicago. I've been the alderman since 2007 on the South Side. I am I'm the chairman of the Budget Committee. We just passed the progressive historic budget in the city of Chicago. I have been a social worker, a city planner. I've run 3 not-for-profit organizations, and I have a bachelor's in developmental psychology from the University of Rochester and a social service administration degree from the University of Chicago. All that's important, but I am the daughter. What's most important is that I'm the daughter of Norman and Catherine Dowell. Norman was a janitor, Catherine was a nurse, and they instilled in me the values of integrity, hard work, excellence, and service. And those are the values that guide my adult and professional life now. All of us will have the same ideas or similar ideas as it relates to the modernization of the Secretary of State's office, to improving literacy across the state, to safeguarding our right to ballot access and to vote, and to improve procurement services, which is one of my important goals for the office. But I think tonight is an opportunity for you to really gauge the heart and the mind and the commitment of all 3 of us that are here with you this evening. I am a public servant. I will represent your interests, and I look forward to the conversations we're going to have this evening. Thank you, Congressman.
All right. Thank you very much, Pat. You've now heard from the 3 candidates for Secretary of State who are with us tonight. Anna Valencia is the 4th candidate, and she is unable to attend because she said she had a prior engagement. So with that, our first question is presented by Scott Thompson. He is the owner and the CEO of the Big Radio Group. Scott Thompson is also the host of the morning show on 93.7 FM.
The Secretary of State's office is very important to everybody in the state of Illinois. And I guess the question we have for you is that since every one of you is from Chicago, how are you going to relate to us here in Northwest Illinois?
Okay, we will, the order of this question will be answered first by Alexi Genulius, then David Moore, then Pat Dowell. Alexi.
Thank you very much for your question. And I will tell you that as the only candidate who's actually gotten votes outside of the city of Chicago, the only candidate that's run for office outside of the city of Chicago, I care deeply about the priorities and issues that folks in central and southern Illinois face. That's one of the reasons why we're able to get the endorsement of the Southern County Chairman's, Democratic County Chairman's Association, the earliest they've ever endorsed a statewide candidate. Having spent time in central Illinois, in the Quad Cities in southern Illinois, something that's very important. The priorities that all of you face are different than they do in the south and west side of Chicago. That being said, there's also a lot of issues that are similar. We've talked about our library system. We have an inequitable library system. Here in downtown Chicago, we have one of the nicest libraries in the country, and yet we were in Belleville, Illinois a couple of weeks ago, and they don't even have a library. They're asking us for a mobile library, just a place where they can have access to Wi-Fi and the ability to take their kids somewhere so they can read some books and be able to get some tutoring or mentoring or after school programs. That inequality needs to be fixed. We've also talked about the digital divide. Many rural communities don't have access to Wi-Fi. We need to fix that. Hopefully the infrastructure bill will help with some of these inequities, but we see them. I've worked as a statewide elected official, state treasurer. We've also been the only candidate to help with farmers. We produced over $4 billion, excuse me, in ag loans when I was state treasurer, low interest loans to help our farming families, something that we were very proud of. So I think just because they're different geographic regions, it's still the same issues. We want to focus on modernization. We want to protect voting rights for everyone. We want to make sure we have the finest library system in the country. And I view the office as a customer service office. And I'm seeing my time is up. We have to enhance the customer. We have to enhance the customer experience for everyone, regardless of where they live.
Thank you, Alexi. David Moore.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that question. And I'm start out with answering that question is that I'm born and raised in Chicago, and growing up and graduating from Simeon High School, all I knew was Chicago. But it was when I went to Macomb, Illinois, at Western Illinois University, where I began to love Illinois. The reason being, I was an RA in college. I was involved in student government, and I had the opportunity to not only serve and work with many people across this state. I was responsible for those young men, and their parents trusted them with me. Whether they were Democrats, whether they were Republicans, whether they were different ethnicities, whether they lived in Pekin, Pontiac, Decatur, or DuQuoin, I had those relationships and still have those relationships across the state. And so when you talk about how we're going to know the differences, I keep in touch because those are my family and those are my friends. My fiance, God bless her soul, lived in Belleville. So I spent most of my life down in Belleville during those times. I had 2 job offers when I graduated from college, one from State Farm and one from Ralston Purina in the Quad Cities. I elected to go with Ralston Purina in the Quad Cities. So I lived in the Quad Cities for a couple of years. And again, family and friends. And so these are people that I connect with, still know today, that are not only helping me here, but also making sure that I stay abreast on what's going on in the issues across this state, whether it's in Northern, Southern, or Eastern, or Western Illinois universities, or those areas. My interest, I'm gonna tell you, we can say what we're going to do, but we gotta look what people have already done. One of the things that happened, that didn't affect the city so much, is that they raised the trailer place from $18 to $118. I listened to people across the state because my friends called me, and I was a voice for that. And one of my state representatives, by the name of State Representative Evans, helped get that overturned, and they bought it, Marcus Evans, back down to $36. So that's how I'm connected to the people throughout this state. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, David. Next, we have Pat Dowell. 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. This question has come up as I've traveled across the state. People feel that if you're from Chicago, you don't know the rest of the state. I think what's mostly important is how one conducts their life. I grew up in New York and went to a very diverse high school where nobody went to the prom. And I, as the class president, was able to create a prom where everyone could enjoy, rock music, folk music, soul food, Greek food, Haitian food. We just had a ball. And I think what's important here is someone who's a consensus builder, who's a bridge builder, who understands and has the ability to bring people together no matter where they live. I think it's important to have a listening ear. And the reality is that at the end of the day, we all want to be serviced well by the Secretary of State's office. We all don't want to stand in a line when we go to the Secretary of State's office. If we have to interface with the website, we want to make sure that it's user-friendly. If we have to go to a library, when we want our libraries to be equitable. Everyone basically wants the same thing in life. And I think you need to have someone who is able to have a listening ear, who has the experience and the track record of bringing people together, no matter where they live within the state. I'm not, Chicago is not the tail that wags the dog. And I believe that, and will work very hard as your next Secretary of State to bring people together in the best service to the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Thanks to all three of you. We're going to move to our second question. This one will be presented by Renardo Weathersby. He's the chair of the Stephenson County Democratic Party.
Voter suppression legislation that has passed in several states since the 2020 election, and questions about election integrity are in the news every day. Last June, the Secretary of State office settled a lawsuit brought by voter advocacy groups. The suit contended the Secretary of State's driver services organization violated state and federal law and frustrated Illinois citizens' ability to register to vote. How do you plan to ensure that the motor voter law is implemented properly in all driver's license facilities and every eligible voter is readily able to register to vote?
All right, on this one, we will go in this order. David Moore first, Pat Dowell second, Alexi Genulius will be third. David, 2 minutes, please.
Thank you so much. What's been important to me is automatic voter registration and us pushing it there. And so one of the things I've proposed is that I want to give, so we can continue to build up our voting base, but also give people an opportunity to get registered, is giving them what I call an opt-out option. So at the age of 16, most people come in and get their driver's license, but they cannot register to vote at 16. What I propose doing, and we did a press release about a couple of days ago, is that I want to make sure that on a young adult's 18th birthday, that they get a card from the Secretary of State, not only saying happy birthday, but saying congratulations, you are registered to vote, and give them either opt-out option, and at that time, or they get to select their party that they want to be a member of. And so it's very important that we give those options to people to vote, but we're also making sure that we're working with the all the departments within the state to make sure that we ensure voter integrity. We know that the Secretary of State's office, unlike here in Illinois, unlike in other areas, ours is ran by the Illinois Department of Elections. But it's important that the Secretary of State's office work collectively with the Illinois Department of Elections, Board of Elections, so that we can make sure that there's voter suppression is not there. in any form or any manner. And that collaboration is very important.
Thank you, David. Pat Dowell.
Thank you. I think in terms of increasing voter turnout we need to make sure that we can register young people to vote within our schools and within our libraries. I also think that in order to ensure voter integrity, that we need to work with our county clerks across the state who are responsible for, getting out the vote by mail provisions, that they're done in coordination with the Secretary of State's office so that there's no disconnect between the county and the Secretary of State's office when it comes to whether or not the voter can actually vote. I've heard stories as I've traveled across the state about the glitch that happened, and that's something that I would correct immediately. I also agree that, the Secretary of State's office is not as robust in Illinois as it is in places like Michigan and Georgia. And I would want to work with voting rights advocates, the state legislature, and the governor's office to figure out where we need to increase our safeguards so that we can ensure the integrity of the vote in Illinois. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Alexi Genulius.
Well, before I answer the question directly, I just want to say both my parents came to this country as immigrants. And when they came here, they had nothing, but they believed in the promise of America, where everyone has a chance to achieve the American dream. And to them, when they finally became US citizens, the ability to vote, to take part in an election was such an incredible honor. And I remember from the time I was a kid, both of them it wasn't about whether or not they were going to vote, it was what time of day they were going to vote and which one of their boys they were going to take with them. And to see here in the year 2021, these laws, these dangerous, undemocratic laws and bills that are being passed in some of these states to disenfranchise voters is something we should all be horrified by. This is absolutely unacceptable. Now more than ever, we need to do everything we can to enfranchise people, to make it easier to vote, to make the voting box more accessible. So I would be in favor of increasing mail-in voting. I would be in favor of Election Day being a national holiday. We have to do everything we can to protect our democracy. Every other issue pales in comparison if we're not there to protect the right to vote, if we do not protect democracy. I think we're a little spoiled here in Illinois because we're an island of blue and a sea of red, but this is why this office is so incredibly, incredibly important. Secretaries of State play a vital role, not as much as some other states, and I kind of wish that the Secretary of State's office was the chief election authority in Illinois, but it isn't. It still, however, plays a key role with programs like Motor Voter. Most importantly, we have to make sure that automatic voter registration is implemented efficiently, competently, effectively. That has not been the case. That is something that if I'm Secretary of State, we will work on from day one. It will be a priority of ours. I also mentioned that I will use my seat at the table regarding elections to make sure that Illinoisans are enfranchised, that they can register easily, and that they can access relevant information.
All right, Alexi.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Time up. All right, our third question will be presented by Colton Haven, who is with the Young Democrats of Northwest Illinois.
The Young Democrat of Northwest Illinois wants to know, how will you improve customer service to promote accessibility to information on services for new and young drivers?
All right to the point. The order of answering this one, and still at 2 minutes each, will be Pat first, Alexi second, David third. Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Haven, for your question. I have proposed something called a Secretary of State personal dashboard. It's similar to what you would use with online banking. It would be tied to your driver's license or your state ID number. Through that portal, you could explore and maneuver within the Secretary of State's office to get information about renewing your driver's license, how you might take your driver's test, renewing your driver's license, taking your vision test. If you want to be an organ donor, you can do that through the portal as well. I think that's one way that young people can get access to the Secretary of State's office, because most of you guys take care of your business through your phones anyway. And I would be very much in tune with making sure that we would have an app for the Secretary of State's office that you could utilize and would be engaged with you like you're engaged on Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. So I believe in innovating the office, and that through that innovation, young people will gain access not only to the services within the Secretary of State, but everything that the state may offer in various departments and even through municipalities.
Thank you, Pat. Alexi?
Well, thank you for your question. The answer is modernization, 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 bring in new technology. First of all, the people of Illinois owe Jesse White a huge debt of gratitude for having cleaned up an office that was plagued by scandal and corruption when he took it over more than 2 decades ago, one of the finest public servants I've ever known. That being said, technologically, the Secretary of State's office has fallen behind. We've all seen it, we all witness it across the state. And as the state agency that more Illinoisans interact with on a daily basis than any other, it acts as a retail operation, providing customer service to customers, just like retail stores and restaurants. COVID has forced us to rethink how we can improve that customer experience by modernization and by using new technology, especially for young folks. I'm proud of the fact that we're the first campaign to offer a new idea like our Skip the Line program that allows people to schedule appointments and not endure long lines or wait times. And this is just the first plank in our modernization effort that includes things like digital driver's license, digital IDs. So everyone's ID and driver's license will be on their mobile device. The creation of an app so you can schedule a time and have access to all the services of the Secretary of State's office. We've also talked of making the vision tests online. The technology already exists to do so in an unhackable, secure manner. So nothing that we're have proposed on modernization is reinventing the wheel. The technology already exists. We have to do everything we can to enhance the customer experience. And we believe that when we modernize these services and put them online, we can save room at DMVs, room that we'd like to fill by creating small business administration units. As many of you know, the Secretary of State is responsible for corporate formation and business registration here in Illinois. What we want to do is cut the foot traffic by modernization and putting everything online as much as possible online, and making sure that this is a place where entrepreneurs who want to start their business, expand their business, but don't know the necessarily different. So modernization is going to be the key.
All right. Thank you, Lexi. David?
Thank you so much. As you know, the Secretary of State's office is probably the only office in the state that touches our children and our youth from the time they're children, when we're talking about bike safety, to driver's education, to voter's registration. And so that's why I'm excited that I was the first to talk about starting a youth engagement office. There's 122 driver service facilities throughout the state. And in honor of Jesse White, and I said this when I announced that I'm going to create 122 Jesse White youth engagement offices using public-private partnership. I want to do that because you want to make sure our young people get civically involved, but also that we can give them internships so that we can learn from them. I tell people when I'm with young people and I'm having events in my ward, if you tell me to invite a group out, I'm gonna say bring the Temptations or the Jacksons. My young people saying we don't want that. That's why you have to have their voices at the table. I've been the one in this race that's saying we must give our young people a voice and a seat at the table. And so by proposing that and making sure we have that youth engagement office, we get to hear the ideas of our youth, and so we can implement those. Yes, as Alderman Dowell said, we all know that modernization and that taking this mainframe even and system that's at the Secretary of State office and do some cloud computing. Everybody knows that we need to do technology, but at the end of the day, there are broadband challenges within our communities, and we must make sure that we touch every young person who may not have access to broadband internet. And so it's that youth engagement office is what's going to be critical to me to advance the causes for our young people. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thanks to the three of you. We're going to move to our fourth question now. This one will be presented by Ben Donovan. He is the political director for the Northwestern Illinois Building Trades Council. Ben.
Candidates. As you may know, many Secretary of State facilities in downstate Illinois are not actually owned by the state of Illinois, but are leased from local landlords. Many of these landlords skirt Illinois prevailing wage law and other regulations by completing renovations on their facilities before the Secretary of State moves in. As Secretary of State, will you require that local landlords that want to lease from the state of Illinois use prevailing wage labor and work with contractors that are affiliated with apprenticeship programs?
Okay, in the order to answer this question, Alexi, David, then Pat. Alexi.
So Congressman, I don't think it was a little sketchy on my part. I don't know if I heard the question very well, but.
Okay, his question, will you commit to requiring work on driver's license facilities to be done at prevailing wage?
So the answer is, to the extent we're able to, yes. Now, as you mentioned, Ben, thank you for your question. The part that I did hear, a lot of the properties are leased. And I think the time to negotiate that is when the lease either comes up or even before the lease comes up. So the answer is yes, unequivocally, something that I fought for. I've always fought for working families. And I will tell you, the men and women of organized labor have been strongly behind our campaign. That is something that I'm very proud of. I understand the importance of prevailing wage. I understand the importance of fighting for working families. I'm proud of the fact that we've been endorsed by SEIU, which is not just the largest union in Illinois and the most progressive, but also represents about 2,500 employees within the Secretary of State office. We've also been endorsed by the Teamsters, which has employees in the office, Local 399, the plumbers and pipe fitters, among many other folks in organized labor. I've stood side by side with organized labor in the past. I will do so going forward. And I'm very proud of the fact that when I was state treasurer, even outside the purview of the office, we worked to fight for working families. We helped save Hart-Schaffner Marks, which was the country's oldest suit maker. When Wells Fargo, which received $25 billion in bailout money, was going to shut down and get rid of 900 people, we stood up along with organized labor. We fought for those jobs. We told Wells Fargo they could not do business with the state if they shut down this plant. We saved 900 jobs. We did a similar thing with the Quad Cities die casting, the settlement that we reached in 2010 along with Congressman Phil Hare. So I'm very proud of my record with organized labor. I'm very proud of what we're going to do going forward. And I can promise you that as we negotiate these leases, that's going to be a huge component of it.
Thanks, Alexi. David.
Yes, thank you so much. As I told you at the start, I have a dual degree in accounting and operations management from West Illinois University. And I spent 10 years working in the private sector. And one of the things going into any office, what you want to do is make sure you conduct a good audit and you look at these contracts and you look at what you have. And so where there's opportunities for us to renegotiate or opportunities to bring up new leases, it must and emphatically must have to have prevailing wage. As I said at the outset, everybody in this race has a track record. And when you go look at our track record, you will see even ordinances that we've passed been for our working families in the city of Chicago. And I'm happy about that. And I'm sure Alderman Dowell is going to speak to that as well. And we've stood up for working families, not only for the fight for 15, but also making sure that wage theft wasn't an issue with people. And so prevailing wage is very key in making sure that not only their contractors, but their subs are also paying, because sometimes when you get down to the sub level, they're not paying. And so those are the things that we watch for, and those things that are critical to making sure that our families have a living wage, and make sure we go after them and pass and work with our legislatures even to pass laws to go after people who are not paying prevailing wage. So absolutely.
Thank you, David. Pat?
The good thing about being the last one on this question, I can just tell Mr. Donovan, yes, I will be supporting prevailing wages. That is something that I think the head of an agency, the head of an organization sets the standards and sets the tone. And I think that the Secretary of State, using taxpayer dollars, we need to apply standards that will protect our working families, that will protect the workers even that are working inside of these facilities that the Secretary of State leases. I agree with the point that leases are at the time a new lease is negotiated, that's the exact time when you can put these standards in. Either people are going to fall in line or they're going to we'll have to find another location. And so I'm committed to working to install prevailing wages. I've been supported by labor, as every other candidate here has been supported. I've been supported by SEIU, Chicago Federation of Laborers, the Teamsters, Local 150. I mean, I may not have those endorsements at this point in time, but these agencies and labor organizations have been supporting me because of my commitment to Chicago's working families, and I expect to have that done throughout the entire state of Illinois.
Thank you, Pat. I know we are halfway through our questions now. We have 4 left. Alexi Genulius had let us know before this about yesterday. He said that he had a prior commitment. Alexi, I know that you have to leave now. Do you have any closing thoughts before we move on to our last 4 questions in your absence?
I wish I could stick around longer. I'm truly appreciative of you guys having this. Alderman Moore, Alderman Dowell, thank you for being here. Congresswoman, thank you for hosting us. I look forward to doing this forum in person, hopefully sometime soon. And again, we have to make sure we elect Democrats. We have to make sure we get people out to vote. We have to knock on doors. We have to make phone calls. So please, please, please stay engaged. Please get involved. We saw what happened in Virginia last week. We need people to get out and vote. We need to keep this seat. We need to fight for our Democrats up and down the ticket. Thank you so much for including me.
Very good. Thank you, Alexi. Appreciate it. And we will see you again, hopefully in person soon with in a forum that we can do all together. All right.
Thank you
With
so
that,
much.
we will move on to the 5th question. This one will be presented by Kathy Wilkin, and she is with the Carroll County Democrats. Kathy.
Carroll County Democrats want to know, will you commit to keeping the driver's license facility open in Chadwick, Illinois?
All right. That's right to the point. David, we'll go to you first and then Pat.
Again, using my accounting background, you have to go assess and make sure you're talking to the people in the community and making sure that they're paying prevailing wage. And so I can't say that. And if I go there and that facility is not, using prevailing wage workers. And so again, it's just going there and assessing it, talking to the residents of the community and making sure that they are being fair by the workers there and the residents of that area. And we'll make sure if they are, that they'll stay. If not, then they won't.
All right, Pat.
Thank you, Congressman. I've been traveling the state and seeing a lot of inequities as I've moved across the state. So I can't commit today to what Ms. Wilkin is asking me. I definitely have to take an assessment of all of the facilities across the state. Some areas need facilities, some areas don't. And so that would be later, but I would like to see information on that particular facility and compare it to all of the other facilities that we have across the state. So I can't make a commitment tonight.
All right. Thanks to you both. Let's move to our 6th question. This will be asked by Pat Norman, who's the president of the local chapter of the NAACP. Pat.
if elected Illinois Secretary of State, as a member of the executive branch, how will you exert your influence to ensure that people of color are not negatively nor disproportionately impacted by decisions made by your fellow executive branch members? Decisions concerning social justice, voting rights, and elections. So, how will you use your influence and not yield to political pressure?
All right, we will start with Pat Dowell, then we'll go to David Moore. Pat.
Thank you for your question, Ms. Norman. I pride myself on being an independent. I'm not somebody who is easily swayed by politics. I mean, I don't think that this seat should be in the hands of a politician, and I will behave as someone who is a public servant. To answer your question specifically, you know, I've mentioned increasing the procurement goals in that office for minority, small businesses, women businesses to 40%. It's the current spend is 20%, it goes up to 30% in January. My commitment is 40%. Regarding social justice, the Secretary of State's office is the holder of the archives, all of the historical archives. And when you open up those archives and you look at the history of the decisions that were made in the state that affect Brown and Black people, those archives have to be made visible, transparent, and available so that people can see the history of our state and act accordingly. And that may mean working with organizations like the NAACP, like the Urban League, and our state legislature and our executive offices to bring pressure to bear to change some of the policies that negatively impact our state. I would be a voice for those people. And I'm very excited about the opportunity to do so. I currently do that as an alderman in my own ward and as the budget chairman for the city of Chicago. I think it's important that whatever you do, whatever investments that you make, they're made with a sense of social justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. David.
Thank you so much for that question. You always hear me say, there are two people who always keep my eyes on. Anybody who says they want to be a preacher and anybody who says they want to be an elected official. Because it's not something you run to, it's something you run from. It's a calling on your life. And I say that to say is that you have to be willing to lose this seat by doing the right thing. If no one is willing to lose the seat, that's not who you want. One thing, again, I'll repeat over and over again, everybody in this race has a track record. When you go look at Alderman Moore's record in the city council, you'll see me taking some of the toughest votes when it's about standing with the least of us. And when I stand with the least of us, sometimes I'm only the no vote. I get called crazy. I've been told you're gonna lose your seat. And guess what? I'm still here because I've stood with the people. That's what I'm going to do. And that was your question. And that's, you have to know that I'm willing to lose this seat to do the right thing by those who've been disenfranchised and discriminated against. And the people who have been disenfranchised and discriminated against are not always poor people, and it's not always minorities. It's women who work the same job as men, but do not get the same wage. Who's gonna fight for them? It's working families who's trying to get a living wage. Who's gonna fight for them? And then when it comes to social justice, let me tell you, even before I became an elected official, I was out on those front lines, and I will continue to be on those front lines, and I'll continue to be willing to lose this seat to stand up for the right things. Thank you.
All right, David, we are to our last two questions. Our seventh question is going to be asked by Jennifer Kanoski, and she is with the Northwest Illinois business community. Jennifer.
Northwest Illinois businesses would like to know, would you automate notices for expiring corporations, LLCs, and not-for-profits registration by email rather than only through U.S. postal mail as it is now?
Okay, David, we're going to start with you this time and then go to Pat. David.
Absolutely. As I've traveled this state, but even just in this county alone, that has come up from many business people. And that's why we were talking about it's important that we make sure we update our system, make sure we modernize our systems so that we can use technologically effective to communicate and to get information out that will help people and especially our businesses. We want to make sure that we put things in place not to impede our businesses, but to help them succeed. Not impede, but succeed. And we've not only done those type of things in the city council. As a leader, that's what I'll be doing at the Secretary of State office, working with businesses, talking with them, making sure that we not only modernize, but making sure that we listen to them to find out what are some of the best practices to make sure that they are efficient, not only in information, but also in doing even what we call paperwork, which we need to eliminate so that they can be effective in their businesses without spending a lot of money.
Thank you, David. Pat.
Yes, the quick answer to your question, Ms. Kanoski, is yes. I would definitely work to, so you don't have to deal with the snail mail, that you could deal with email. But it's not just the notifications, it's also being able to make sure that you can have registrations that are not done annually, that perhaps are done every 3 years, every 2 years. That's something that I would work with small businesses and not-for-profits. This is also an issue for not-for-profits to look at. Secondly, I think that where was I going with this? Businesses and not-for-profits. Also, it's about the fees. Sometimes the fees are too high, and sometimes the fees could be paid in an aggregate form so that you don't have to do that annually. And so those are some of the things that I would be looking at, working with small businesses and not-for-profits across the state. We've heard this as we've traveled. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Pat. All right. We are down to our last question for this evening. Our 8th and final question is presented by Kate Freeman, and Kate is the acting chair of the Joe Davis Democratic Party. Kate.
Hello, candidates, and greetings from Joe Davis County Democrats. Thank you for joining the race for Secretary of State. We Democrats are concerned about the role that lobbyists play in state government. What plans do you have to update the registration requirements and then monitor the activities of the lobbyists? Thank you for your response.
All right, thank you, Kate. Let's reverse the order on this final question. Pat, you'll go first. David, you'll wrap it up.
Great question. First of all, the lobbyist website is all messed up. That's just the bottom line. If you want to find a lobbyist, it's very difficult to just go in and find that person by their name, and then to find out who their clients are. So we would definitely work to modernize the website so that lobbyists could be easily identified. They could identify who their clients are, who's seeking to hire them or who has hired them in the past, to give you a backward look as well as the present look. I think that the work that we've done in the city council to bring ethics into the lobbying space is something that we would look at the Secretary of State's office to ensure that there's legislation put in place that would hold lobbyists accountable and make sure that they have the integrity that we would want to see in our government. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. David.
Let me unmute here. Thank you so much. First of all, it is very important that we increase transparency. And so Part of my opening statement, I talked about 3 buckets. I talked about the service of the Secretary of State, the business of the Secretary of State, and the responsibility. And part of that service is making sure that this whole office is transparent. And I'm glad you mentioned the libraries, because most people only know us as driver services, but there are 20 departments within the Secretary of State's office. So while currently the SOS, the Secretary of State office, can't police lobbyists, and that's according to state law, the Secretary of State office maintains lobbies, registrations, and statements of economic interest, as we know as ethics statements. And so what we can do is advocate for change in the state law that allows what's important for me for more transparency. And I commend Secretary of State White for creating the Inspector General Office in 2000. After he brought on, I think his name was Mr. Jim Burns. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. Make sure we have a strong, and I mean a very strong Inspector General, so that they're looking at these things, not someone that just going to answer to me that I want to control, but someone that has an independent voice that's looking at this so that the taxpayers can be protected. Thank you.
All right, thank you, David. You all have answered the 8 questions that were presented to you. So that is it for the questions. So what we're going to do now is you will each have 2 minutes for your closing remarks. And because Pat went last for the opening remarks, we're going to let Pat go first. And David, you can wrap it up. And then we'll close it out for the evening. But Pat, 2 minutes for your closing remarks.
Okay, thank you, Congressman, and thank you to everyone involved in putting this forum together. I think in closing, one thing I would want you all to know is that I'm also a Democratic committeeman. I've been a delegate for both Obama and Biden. And I am seeking this office because I want to provide the best customer service to the people of the state of Illinois and to increase our involvement in the democratic process. Again, I'm a public servant. I think that the next person who replaces Secretary White must be a public servant and must be someone who has a heart for the people, someone who is going to bring integrity to the office, who will make sure that we don't go back to the days of corruption and scandal and graft in the Secretary of State's office. The other thing that you should know is that I'm not using this office as a stepping stone to a higher office. For me, it's a destination location. I'm someone who has delivered for my constituents since 2007, and I will continue to do that for the people of the state of Illinois. I'm a workhorse, I'm not a show horse, and I'm someone who has a record of delivering. I have the skills, the maturity, and the integrity and the experience to handle the job of Secretary of State. And I look forward to getting to know this county and the people in it in a deeper fashion as we move forward to June. Again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Pat. And David, 2 minutes for your closing remarks.
Thank you so much. I've been blessed in life, and partly because I had the opportunity to be born at the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church coming up under Reverend Clay Evans, a man who always taught me that keep a good name because your name will get somewhere before you do. He taught me to rise above isms, and I learned that when I was in college at Western Illinois University, working with a diverse group of people. I learned to rise above racism, sexism, denominationalism, and yes, my favorite fellow Democrats, even partyism. He taught me how to work with people all across this state, and because that's what he did as a pastor. He was called the pastor's pastor. And by doing that, what I learned to do was just serve. And so you may see an alderman right now, but as I told you before, alderman, I was a block club president. I was a precinct captain. I was there when Dick Durbin first ran, circulating his petition. I was there when Bill Clinton ran, circulating his petitions. And I was there, the only one in this race in 1998, to circulate Secretary of State Jesse White's petitions and help many Democrats across this state get elected, just serving never wanted to be the number one person in front. Always loved elevating others. And that's what I want to continue to do at the Secretary of State's office, elevate others. And that's what I'm going to use that voice for. One thing I knew about Secretary White, he was the highest vote getter and still is throughout the state. David Moore, I promise you, will still be that higher vote getter throughout the state and making sure, not for myself, but to elevate others as I've always done. So in this race, you don't want less, you want more. David Moore for Secretary of State. And I hope I can earn your support. Thank you.
Okay, that wraps up the evening. Pat, Dowell, David Moore, thank you to you both. Alexi Genulius was with us earlier, had to leave. Anna Valencia, the fourth candidate for Secretary of State, was not able to be with us tonight. But let's all of us thank our candidates for being with us. So yay, if we could all be together, you would hear a round of applause. But thanks also to the people behind the scenes who helped prepare for this event. These are folks from all three counties in Northwestern Illinois. And for those who have tuned in and will tune in, I want to thank you for taking the time to learn more about the candidates for Illinois Secretary of State. Please tell your friends to watch this as well. I know that the folks in Stephenson County, Carroll County, Joe Davis County, all the Democrats there will be looking to host more forums for other races as we approach the Democratic primary election. Remember, the primary election is on June 28th. 2022. It's different because of the delay in the census. We're not used to that in Illinois. We're used to a March primary in the general election cycle. So remember, June 28th, 2022. So keep your eye out for that. Finally, please remember that the ballot box is your voice in government. So no matter who you vote for, just please make sure you vote. Spread the word. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.